Perfect. So we'll just give it a minute so that everybody has time to join.
I don't see anything in LinkedIn still. No, now it goes. Now.
Yeah, there's like a few seconds of a delay. Perfect. So I'll start with a short introduction. So I'll turn off the music. And first and foremost, I would just like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We have a really beautiful, incredible discussion on AI ethics. This is a part 2 of our series, AI governance, which is co-organized with The Bloom. The Bloom is an incredible organization that has it's a learning and supportive community for people who work in social impact careers. And we're SheAI. We're a digital platform and community that empowers women with AI education. I'm Maya. I'm the co-founder and CMO of SheAI. And today we are joined by Ashley and Marium. Thank you for joining us, ladies.
Thank you.
How are you feeling tonight?
Great. Great.
Excited to talk about the topic. Real passion.
Yeah, it's such a relevant and important topic to have. We've also prepared a resource for everybody that's joining us tonight, and we'll be sharing the discount codes to our platforms, both SheAI and The Bloom, at the end of this conversation. But for now, let's meet our speakers. So Ashley is a researcher and practitioner living in Washington, D.C., and working in AI systems of care, leading the EAAMO academic working group and evolving it into living labs, where nonprofits and researchers co-experiment to test what is safe to try within generative AI. She also runs AI in Common, a public knowledge system exploring ethical and survival-centric AI design. Ashley has dedicated her work to incredible human-centric products designed to help people who have gone through trauma and difficult experiences. Marium is joining us from Italy, and she's a hybrid designer with a background in strategic design who reshapes business strategies and organizational ecosystems through human behavior studies and technological applications. She serves as a professor at Politecnico di Milano and is the founder of Lab Coexist, a tech education platform for AI development and with critical transdisciplinary approach. Thank you, ladies, both for being here. I will just put your LinkedIns in the chat, so for anybody that wants to connect, they have the access to. So let's set the scene. Currently, what we're seeing is that most LLMs are coming out of North America, which takes about 42% of the global market, followed by Asia Pacific, which is about 25%, and Europe with about 20%. What we're seeing specifically in the US high-tech research teams that are developing these LLMs is that they're predominantly male and white. So women actually represent only 10% of these research teams, and Black people only 5%. Obviously, other minorities present even smaller percentages. And research studies shows that diversity prediction theorem, they show that the more diverse the groups are, the lesser issue there is with ethical considerations. So diverse groups will always outperform an individual expert or a homogeneous group, because the diverse voices all together create an inclusive view and reduce the individual biases. And so so studies like media and technology and algorithmic outputs, such as AI models, show that diverse perspectives in products tend to reflect and reinforce major worldwide views, which leads into stereotyping and erasing certain types of groups. So having more diverse voices equals better outcomes. So now going specifically into AI ethics. So 66% of all ethical regulations come from the US and Europe. And so I think that's a perfect way to start. So I would like to ask you both, because we now today in the room, we have both the US and the European perspective. What lessons can the US and EU learn from each other's regulatory approaches?
I'm happy to kick us off. And as we live in it today, the AI and the AI policy landscape is continuously evolving. But we are seeing the US and the EU head in very different directions in terms of regulatory styles. A few lenses that I'll bring up to help explain how this plays out in practice. In terms of the digital legal landscape, the EU and actually China as well have focused on holistic coverage through early regulatory efforts. And the EU AI Act is regarded as best standard in regulation to date. Canada has taken the middle ground. They've taken an approach focusing more on soft law initiatives like AI national strategies, data privacy bills, but not that kind of hard law approach that the EU has done. And the US, on the other hand, has taken the extreme where they're adopting a decentralized model with no federal tech-specific regulation. And what this means in terms of the regulatory approach is that we have the EU and Canada as well adopting what they're calling a horizontal strategy, where they focus on risk and impact classifications, as well as at the application level, targeting things like real-time biometric identification and deepfakes. China also has hard law requirements, and they target specific types of AI as well, recommender systems, generative AI coming up as well, with overarching frameworks for AI development. The US, on the other hand, has taken a vertical approach, focusing more on sector-specific laws with lighter touch regulatory measures, voluntary guidance, and industry standards. And the third lens that I'll bring up, and this is a really important one as well, is whether the countries adopt an ex ante or an ex post approach. And what does this mean? So in the EU AI Act, there's a heavy ex ante emphasis, and this focuses on preventative measures. And so we see a lot of detailed risk-based obligations that need to be met before the AI can be deployed. The US, on the other hand, has traditionally been ex post, focusing less on preventative instructions and more on monitoring and penalties. And this is affecting what we're seeing in AI development today. And the difference in policy approach also affects where the funding goes. And this year as well, there's very clear direction from the administration where a lot of funding is focused on national security and defense for the US government. This lighter touch regulation fosters innovation. And what we also see is a lot of money going into commercialization of AI. AI companions are flooding the market. And we also see attention on catastrophic risks, but very much less so on people harm mitigation. And that's why AI ethical product design is really important because that's not where the funding is going in the US at the moment.
Yes, I completely agree with Ashley. We are in a moment where we have a lot of complexity and understanding what path to undertake, because in the meantime, US is like innovating a lot. Okay, Europe is a little bit behind because there are these strict rules, let's say, that we need to follow. But at the same time, we need to actually acknowledge first the context that we are and what is the path that we're going to follow. We don't know actually. We're not certain how the things are going to evolve. Actually, there is a very important politician here in Italy that is called Mario Draghi that is asking the European Union to soft down a little bit all the guidelines and the rules that EU Act has been creating. But at the same time, my questions are: what are the trade-off to, warranty ethics in a society that right now is being boomed by a lot of information, a lot of bias, and is creating a lot of harm. So we are not in the correct track if US is the right track or the European Union is doing the right track. We need to be very objective and see as designers where this path is going actually.
Thank you for that perspective. Yeah. So let's continue to the problems that we're being faced nowadays. So while there are certain regulation or policies in place, and we do tend to have a general agreement about the 5 pillars of AI ethics, which is transparency, justice, accountability, security, and privacy, AI harms are increasing. They're reaching the headlines. And they do differ from the traditional machine learning harms. Could you speak a little bit about that, please?
I'm happy to kick off this topic. And I think it's such an important one because what we see in the media now is framing AI as either miracle or apocalypse. And this binary causes many to freeze, especially what we're seeing women and practitioners as well out of shaping systems that will touch lives. And I think we're in the last 10 years, a lot of responsible AI frameworks have come out, and we have a lot of great material now on these 5 pillars of AI ethics, Maya, that you talk about. But one of the challenging things is that generative AI has introduced new complexities for this. And give a brief introduction of some of the new harms. I think ones that we're probably most familiar with are hallucinations, when the AI creates plausible but false content that can be cascaded at scale. And what we saw this summer that made big headlines was the Chicago Sun newspaper had published a summer reading list, which in fact had the majority of the books on it did not actually exist. And this summer as well, in May, we also saw fake citations come out in the White House Health Report, Make America Healthy Again, showing that both big commercial organizations and governments are using generative AI and getting caught out when these hallucinations aren't being addressed before publication. And correlated with this is the fear that Gen AI will erode critical thinking. This was something that did initially start with machine learning, where there was concern about what they call the automation bias, where humans would defer to machine judgment. And this is now being taken much more at scale with big concerns from everything from people in the workforce and especially students as well, who are now turning to ChatGPT to do the homework for them. Then we have people harms, and we're seeing a lot of this in the headlines as well. ChatGPT caused me to have delusions. ChatGPT encouraged suicide. The amplified self-harm of having an AI that is able to converse with you and almost come across as a person is a real social problem that we don't really see solutions yet. And there's also cultural flattening. And I think this is a little bit more subtle when we think about traditional machine learning having bias. We know a lot about inherited biases when they use it for criminal justice to do things like predict whether someone should go on parole or in welfare situations. And we also know about AI bias from photo recognition, where early photo recognition software was not able to detect Black faces. Now we see it in a lot more subtle way because a lot of our large language models today are trained on Reddit, and they inherit certain cultural biases and stereotypes that will come out in quite very elegantly conveyed speech. And the fourth one, catastrophic risks. And these are the existential threats where we worry about those sci-fi scenarios where AI will make a decision to, release biological warfare or press the red button. And catastrophic risk is one of those. We don't know what the probability is, but if it happens, it will be catastrophic for society. And this is getting a lot of hype and funding. And we see that catastrophic harms are dominating the attention, getting a lot of funding, but everyday human harms are under-resourced, whether it's in terms of preventing, because we don't have that policy approach in the US, or whether it's in terms of equipping people to be able to make better decisions and use their AI more safely and more responsibly.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective. I think lots of people have their experience, the first experience they have with AI is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is well known to be a yes man, and it's quite dangerous to use it as some people are using it, which is for mental and health support. It's quite critical because it will instantly reconfirm your beliefs. You'll always be in the right, and you'll always be left feeling satisfied. But that doesn't actually mean that it brought in different perspective. It just wants to satisfy you as a user. It just wants you to keep using it for longer. And so it's important to keep these things in mind when we're using tools like that. Perfect. So let's continue. So in terms of procedural, organizational, and institutional changes, you both have observed quite a few. Could you share more about what you've seen change in the recent year or two?
Yeah. So I would be happy to kick off. So I think connecting to what Ashley said before, we have observed some a little bit challenges or problems that organizations are facing actually to overcome these ethical matters regarding AI. And the first thing that we observe doing research and analyzing cases that went wrong, let's say, is the fact that there is technical dominance in AI development. And when I talk about that, I talk about governance, but governance in the process, okay, of AI development. And what we have observed is that the vision comes usually from the top management. So there is a 1, 2, 3 stakeholders from the top management directing one vision, and then this vision is delivered to a tech team that usually is could be data scientists, developers, and so on. And this creates a little bit an underrepresentation, okay, of ethics, social science, design itself, humanities, and even domain experts. And the example that is very famous and probably we all know is the case of Amazon in 2014 when they released the HR tool, actually, that they were aiming, okay, this AI recruiting system, and they started seeing after a while that they were, like interviewing only white male with a certain kind of background. Then after they started seeing that, they say, what happened here? And if you go backwards, you understand that actually the data inputted then inside that system were male of a certain kind of characteristic with a certain kind of background. And if that is the kind of data, of course, even though that you could have machine learning algorithm working on that, it will continue to create the same sort of patterns. And what we have discovered reading about this case is the fact that first, there was a lack of representation of people that probably represented HR in this flux of development. Who were the HR overseeing that, and who oversaw also the data that was input in that system. So this is a question that we have been asking ourselves and try to discuss ourselves of what is happening and why this is happening, because everything in AI is technical, but what we don't know or what we don't see is that AI actually is a human factor. So what is the representation in this flux that we need to have? On the other side, what we have observed also is a gap of AI literacy, okay? And mostly in top management and different kind of disciplines. So I speak as a designer, but probably other disciplines need that AI literacy. And what we have seen right now is the fact that many leaders, okay, are saying we need to do something because they need to be relevant in the market, so they need to follow the wave, but they actually don't acknowledge that AI is a process, is a paradigm, is also an output, and you need to understand that to understand actually where to put the vision of innovation that you want to implement in your product or service. And the other problem that we have observed is the data accountability. The data accountability for me, I think is very important, because I think data is the fuel of any AI system or whatever model that needs to be related with AI. And when you talk about data, it's very natural to say, okay, data are numbers, commas, are phrases or words and so on. Yes, it's also that in a structural matter. But if we don't understand where the data is coming from, how the data is structured, and the quality of data, not in terms of a structural kind of way, so from a data scientist point of view, but the quality of data in terms of information, relevant information that system might have, you can create bias from the very, very beginning. So the oversee of the data is very important. And also there is another that it's very linked to this part, that is the model maintenance. And when we talk about model maintenance, we refer strictly, probably our heads go to the technical part. So if the system has bugs, if there is a need of a new feature and so on. But when you release a product that regards AI and you launch it to the market, and it has AI, machine learning, or Gen AI, you need to understand that that model evolves in unpredictable ways, because, of course, there is AI deterministic and the non-deterministic. The most of the products that we're seeing in the market right now are non-deterministic, and that comes the fact that that system can evolve in different kind of way, unexpected kind of way. So if we don't follow the maintenance, or we are not vigilant of the maintenance phase of the product, it could already have bias, it could increase that bias, or it can create many forms of harm that you cannot acknowledge. So this is a problem, and we have seen all of that through the innovations that passed, like from 5 years ago, that were already launched, and right now they are rectifying what they've done on their products. And the other one, from a, let's say, design point of view, is what Sasha Costanza Schock introduced in the Design Justice book of what she called the user-centered paradox. And this regards us as designers as the fact that we are used to create clusters, okay, of personas in the first stages of our process, to understand them, to co-create, or to understand how they can answer to the final output that we are creating. In that moment, we're creating clusters of information. We need a certain type of people, of a certain background, of a certain context, of a certain age. And what we don't understand there is that probably from the early stage of that process, we're ignoring other kind of characteristics that can actually warranty that product or system could have less bias. So these are some problems that we are observing. I don't know, Ashley, if you want to complement something.
Yeah, I think, Miriam, you've done a great job in covering a lot of the challenges that we see today. And I'll just add on a few points that I'm seeing come out specifically for the nonprofit sector space. And a few things to add on is, as I mentioned before, today we have a proliferation of responsible AI frameworks. But what I'm hearing from the nonprofits that I work with is that in reality, these are very difficult to navigate and burdensome, especially in lean nonprofits. Some of them have teams of 10 or less. No one has the time to read it. And more importantly, I think frameworks typically are very good at describing the what, which are the values, and the why these values need to be done, but lighter on the how. And a big challenge that I'm hearing is that in reality, these principles don't easily translate into operational decisions, where in the real world, there are value conflicts and you need to make trade-off decisions. For example, if you're choosing to launch it on a platform, how do you balance differing values of privacy, where some platforms may be regarded as more secure with encrypted models, or accessibility, which is the platforms that most of your users are using. And these trade-off decisions are something I'm seeing that a lot of nonprofits are struggling with. We have psychological, organizational, ethical resistance as well, big in the nonprofit sector, where it's no surprise that people who care most about ethics are also have a lot of mistrust and concerns about AI. On the other lens, we see a lot of structural risk and power imbalances come out from partnerships with big tech. And we see academic research, they critique corporate capture and short-termism. And I'm hearing from nonprofits where they describe this double bind very vividly. For example, big tech may offer free credits and pilots that make creating your own Gen AI tool seem so feasible. But after that, support disappears, leaving nonprofits dependent and vulnerable. And at the same time, they also get external scrutiny about partnerships and values, from environmental impact of using AI to funder agendas, which creates additional pressure for the nonprofits without additional support. And I think some of these nonprofit AI adoption challenges underpin how we design living labs via participatory design, where we're really focusing on how do you make AI more accessible through user-friendly tools and worksheets to provide operational scaffolds to make values actionable in resource-constrained, high-stakes contexts, and a big focus on small confidence-building co-experiments where it's about, exploring what is safe enough to try. And then through bringing different practitioners together, building that knowledge exchange of use cases and implementation know-how. I think rebalancing of power is something that needs to be done. We hear from nonprofits that have participated in hackathons and the challenges they get from there, where hackathons seem great in principle, but often produce unusable outputs divorced from the context of the vulnerable populations. We want practitioners to lead more experiments mentored by academics, where we are united in this vision of harm minimization. And Miriam, you talk about interdisciplinary teams, and I think that's hugely important as well. I come out from a public policy focus in terms of tech implementation. And I'm hearing from my team members as well, as they're like, we need to get a linguist involved. We need to get psychologists. And I think that when we see the harms that are coming out, especially from generative AI, it's not something that, a technical solution alone can address. And I think lastly, we're really looking at sustained reciprocal partnerships, seeing how nonprofits and academics can work together, align on this goal of harm minimization and not profit maximization.
Yeah, I think you both make incredible points. I think we're definitely in this stage of the tech race, where everybody wants to be the first one to build, and everybody's just obsessed with building, but we don't stop to ask whether, how, or even if we should. So that transitions us nicely into the next question. How can design teams move from best experience design to what could go wrong design? Mariam, I think you're the perfect person to speak on this.
Yeah, so I think we are used to, as designer, to design the best experience. And this is, like our soul. We need the best experience for our users, and we do everything, the human user-centered approach. We are to serve them. But right now, analyzing what all the cases, the good cases and the challenge or the wrong cases or the flaw cases, whatever we want to call it, we need to understand if we need to adopt a little bit a different kind of approach. Okay, so already we have seen different kind of harms, okay, that AI have created. We have bias, we have influential decision making, all the part of the algorithm decision making and so on. So we have a list right now of what AI of how AI can go wrong. So one of the things that I'm trying to push towards in designers is try to imagine, while you are designing the best experience, is like, how can we imagine what could go wrong? Okay, and in that sense, what we need is to have AI literacy, but also harm literacy. And to do so, I invite designers all the time that you need to understand AI. First, the first layer is you need to acquire literacy in AI. The second layer is that you need to understand what happens when the AI goes wrong. And then you need to understand how society is influencing that kind of situation. When you do that, okay, you can have a critical overview of the cases, and you need to start performing in the beautiful customer journeys or blueprints that we have, okay, some flaws that can actually arise if the model is made in a certain kind of way. So you are in a preventive kind of way and not like fixing afterwards the situation. So for me, I think that is something that I invite, and I invite designers to analyze cases like the one from, I don't know, HR, or the ones that mentioned even Ashley, from the case perspective, the data perspective, the model perspective, but also the vision perspective. What happened in the vision? What happened in the beginning? What happened when the strategy started becoming materialized? And I think that's important. And another thing that I invite designers in this case is to start acknowledging different kind of techniques that probably are being born in tech teams or in tech disciplines, like explainability, interpretability, and counterfactual explanations, because these things are providing solutions. So we need to understand, as dot connectors, okay, as designers dot connectors, how can we understand harm, what kind of solutions we can implement, or how can we foresee or make the right trade-off when we're launching that product. For example, Ashley was talking about trade-off, and one of the things is that we are very used to do roadmaps, right? When you are designing a product or when you are delivering a product, you are saying, okay, my minimum viable product is going to go with these features, these UX, UI, and this development tech, back-end, front-end kind of situation. And then the second wave, we have that. In this context, it's inevitable that a system, a product, AI product, goes to the market without bias, and we need to acknowledge that. Okay, so what we need to understand is how can we actually make trade-off of inclusivity, okay, that we set not in a kind of cold way, like this is a feature, this is something that we're having, but what kind of characteristics we are, okay, including in the beginning, and what are the next that we need to include. And at the same time, we need to be vigilant on how the model is evolving. So we might have a lot of work to do. It's not that it might sound overwhelming, okay, but we need to understand actually what are the phases and how can we actually prevent harm or decrease the harm when they go into the market.
I'm happy to add on as well because I 100% agree with Mariam. And one of the things that I hear sometimes is when people say, all right, how can we start getting towards more responsible AI? And it's offered as, the first step is to include all the teams and have a conversation about AI ethics. And that's a really important first step. But if you want to create ethical AI products, it needs to be a process, as Miriam talked about, and not a one-time audit. And I think to complement the excellent point she made in terms of the different design aspects, I'll share a bit of an example of a life cycle model applied in Survivor AI. And this Survivor AI project came out of a collaboration with an organization called Chen. They're a global nonprofit that provides healing services online to survivors of gender-based violence. And they were looking to develop their first gen AI tool. And starting from the design phase, they picked a very targeted use case, which is to use AI to help survivors generate a letter to social media platforms for a takedown request of images that have been shared without their consent. And why was this use case chosen? Because to submit a takedown request, you only need to provide limited trauma history disclosure about the image itself and how it was used without your consent. Whereas other use cases, they might have survivors having to account a lot more of their trauma history. So this was deemed all right. It's a reduced risk of harm because of the minimal trauma history disclosure. When it came to the implementation phase, they looked to build safety features in. For example, they included a two-layered approach where there was a data integration layer to only pass on essential information required for the takedown request to the AI, and other things that users may have shared that aren't required could be filtered out to better protect privacy. And they also implemented guardrails against re-traumatizing language. And this becomes especially important when you're working with vulnerable groups who often face trauma when interacting with humans, when they have to tell their trauma to police, to family members, even to care workers. We hear a lot of stories about how this was really bad experiences. And so this fed into guardrails. And what's the interesting thing about guardrails against re-traumatizing language, you can tell them, AI, you can't use words like sextortion, revenge porn. This is traumatizing language. But with the problem with using a blacklist is that the AI is generative. It's constantly trying to find new ways to communicate, pulling from its wide knowledge, which includes Reddit. And so there has to be a continuous process to pick up these types of examples. Because it could be more than what we may initially imagine they could use. When it came to safety evaluation, the team did rigorous internal testing before proceeding to survivor participatory testathons, inviting survivors, once it was deemed safe enough, to start to try it out and provide feedback before it was officially launched, which will actually happen, I think, in a couple of weeks in October, which is really exciting. But moreover, I think where we came into support was to help them design the evaluation metrics. Because if you look at whether it's OpenAI, Anthropic for best practice examples of how do you do safety evaluation testing, it focuses a lot on traditional harms, accuracy, hallucination, privacy, but we wanted to incorporate values. And so we incorporated things like, is it using the right tone? Was the language acceptable? How accessible is the tool? And so on. And the last link is continuous improvement, which unfortunately is often the missing link. There needs to be a redress avenue when something goes wrong, a feedback loop to integrate the feedback back into design, as well as to circle back to those that were harmed.
Thank you. Yeah, I think those are great points. We really need a holistic view when designing these products. We have some questions already, so please feel free to put in your questions. We have one final question for our speakers for today, and then we'll address your questions. So, ladies, do you use AI for work? And if yes, which I'm assuming it's a yes, how so?
Mariam, would you like to go first or should I kick off?
Sure. Well, as you prefer. If you want to go first, for me, it's okay.
Okay, I'll kick off then. I think I sit between social sciences and AI research, and one of the areas that I'm really interested in is collaborative human AI reasoning. So what does this mean? I'll bring it to life with another case study, a project that I call Can AI Understand Trauma? And in this project, we analyzed nearly 8,000 survivor hopes for healing that came out in free text response to survey questions. It was a never before analyzed data set, and actually in terms of research, there's never been such a collection from around the world about how survivors think about healing. And we saw this also as an opportunity to test how AI interprets complex trauma language. We actually used a few models. We started with traditional natural language processing in terms of methods like n-grams, emotion detection scoring, but we found that to be too brittle, where they heavily focused on keywords and weren't able to pick up a context. A great example of this is we may often hear survivors say their hope being, I don't want to be afraid anymore. And what we're seeing is that traditional NLP methods will classify these emotions as fear, picking up on the word afraid, but leaving out the broader context. We then tried large language models to see where they could classify survivor hopes in two different healing domains. And what we actually found is it could start to understand trauma. It was effective for first-class classification, but where there was gray areas, overlapping, ambiguous cases, this is where it struggled. And I think something very interesting that came out for this to me is that we also experimented a bit with role prompts, seeing if we asked the AI just to perform this analysis without giving it any instructions. Another role that we say is pretend you're a neutral academic researcher, but we didn't provide any context. And in terms of the trauma space, we actually gave it 3 different roles to test out. One was asking it to be emotionally intelligent. The second was asking it to be trauma-informed. And the third was asking it to be survivor-centric. We gave a little bit of explanation about what these terms mean. And what we found was small changes in role definition significantly affected the classification, where the results would be different and they would use different reasoning to justify it. I think where we ended up, and it's a space that I'm really interested in exploring in my research, is collaborative human AI reasoning, where we got AI to surface patterns quickly, and then we got humans to work with the AI hand in hand, looking at it row by row, case by case, where humans bringing the context, ethics, and lived experience on how to interpret those patterns responsibly. And we had both the human and the AI provide reasons to justify their views and together to shape the direction. So I think if we're looking at how to address AI eroding critical thinking, this is the direction that we need to go, where we, instead of AI automating decisions or replacing judgment, we're using AI to extend what's possible when paired with care.
Yeah, I totally marry to what Ashley said, because I'm very obsessed on trying to understand AI and human relationships. Okay, I call it relationship, but of course we're talking about interactions. And one of the things that I'm doing with the students is implying this sort of a speculative exercise where they need to foresee the future of human and AI interactions in 2050, 70. And this year I gave them a brief to create 4 different kind of thinking agents. Okay, thinking agents, the first one was the oracle, that was a little bit visionary, divergent, and so on. The second one was the historian, the one that, you know, create all the historical path and the patterns to understand the present and that could understand a little bit the future. Then the critic, the one who a little bit put in discussion everything, and then the synthesizer that helped put all the pieces together. To do this, I gave, of course, to the students some prompt strategies and tactics where they needed to ask in a certain way the machine, or they needed to give roles to the machine, or even they needed to start implementing principles of Socratic learning where the machine asked the student instead. So we could have this feedback loop of interaction. And in that sense, we were creating like a sort of co-creation methods with the machine to try to design that speculative scenario. And this is one of the things that I'm really working on, and I'm very curious because sometimes AI could seem like a sort of miracle, as someone mentioned before, but actually you just need to understand how to interact and to do so, and to automate and to do so, and to create this co-creation process. We need to acknowledge that we need to be a lot of we need to do a lot of orchestration in terms of what kind of direction, when I tell the machine to do something, how can we architecture actually the conversation to have a final output. So this is one of the also areas of research in a different kind of topic, but yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I'd love to hear about the results after as well. Yeah, I feel like this is like a group of students. Like always, when you have like a study group, you always have like you have a critic, you have someone who synthesizes everything, you have a visionary, and you have someone. It's facts.
I just wrote an article. I can share it with you if you want.
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be really interesting. We can share it later as well on the chat. Perfect. So just to close up, and then we'll go to the questions. Do you have any recommendations for the people in our audiences to increase their AI literacy today? What are some practices that you would recommend?
Okay, I'd be happy to kick off actually if you want. The first thing that I tell designers that you need to understand what is happening behind the scenes of the AI. So you need to understand how an AI works in terms of definition, foundation, processes, what the data means in these systems, the same things of LLMs, because once you understand these kind of technicalities, let's say, once we go out of our comfort zone, it goes much more easy to understand how can we perform innovation and how can we collaborate better with these systems. And this is the thing that I'm very tricky with designers in telling them this. And the second one, I think we need to acquire not just AI literacy, but data literacy. And we just need to sit down with data scientists or tech people with a blueprint and a customer journey and try to co-create what is happening from the different kind of perspective. And because we as designers have these labels of facilitators as well, I invite them to be the catalyst and try to co-create languages, common languages, because this is where the value comes. So when you put your hat of a designer in a humble place and you start interacting with other ones and trying to understand what the other ones are saying, I think it's very, very important.
I absolutely echo what Mariam said for designers to practitioners as well. AI will not wait for perfect policy or perfect teams. It is concrete, urgent work, and the way to get started is grow your practical literacy and start testing responsibly. Try a tool. You could use ChatGPT, you could use Claude, you could use something that's out there. Try it out, bring a use case, notice its limits, and bring your practitioner's mindset to thinking about what evaluation means to you in terms of values. And I think that's the most important thing. I ask our audience to take away from today that it's small hands-on practice plus participatory evaluation, which is how we move from fear to agency to bring the power back into our hands. And join us, whether it's in SheAI or Bloom spaces or in Living Labs as well. We'll be actually opening up another cohort next quarter. We'll be inviting more social impact nonprofit practitioners to join us to co-experiment or stop by running one small test at your organization, and let's all help shape what ethical product design looks like in practice. Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley, for that invitation. Yeah, I would actually love to attend the Living Labs cohort, so I'll be on the lookout. Perfect. So we'll go to the questions now. We had a couple of questions, so thank you. If you have anything else, please feel free to add. But Andy asked, so how do you design for privacy by design and transparency by design so minors or users in general know what's happening?
You want to jump on that, Ashley?
Yeah, I can start by one, and it's I think the Survivor AI example that I shared, I think was a great example of privacy by design, thinking about what's the minimum or maximum ceilings of information that need to be communicated to the AI. And potentially you could have layers. So for example, they actually separated it into using forms to collect data and then applying that filter layer for that data integration to only feed the LLM information that was absolutely necessary. And in terms of transparency by design, I think it's something that I've also emphasized a lot. And so as part of our safety evaluation, we designed a concept called a transparency hub about how do you actually communicate technical features and safety to everyday users who are not your technical audience, and how to do that. And sometimes I go in and look at some of the safety cards released by for Claude or for ChatGPT, and these are long documents, difficult to navigate, and some companies don't even release their safety cards. So when we designed the Transparency Hub, we had to think about it in terms of a few layers. Recommended having a landing page with easy to understand key information there, and then being able to dive in to look at specific aspects about how is safety designed, what are the privacy features are there, and using everyday language, I think helps people know what's happening. And this is from a product lens. If you're releasing a tool, especially if you're working in the nonprofit social impact space, this is where we will look to see the best innovation come out and how to communicate this. The other aspect of it is a bigger challenge that sometimes that keeps me up at night, which is it is passion project of mine, which is I worry about tools like ChatGPT being so powerful in the hands of everyday users, but there's no guide. It does not come with a manual to teach you how to use it responsibly. And that drove my little project that I need to put more work on for AI in Common, which intended to have, whether it's using short articles, comics, and all that to educate people how to look beyond the hype and the fear mongering to understand a little bit more about what's going on. And I think hopefully in time we'll see more of these conversations come out, especially for minors and users in schools as well, because AI literacy is essential for us to live in this digital age.
Yeah, I think that those are incredible points. I think transparency and use cases not only help users to navigate the systems better, but also it will increase the trust within your company. So it is a benefit to everybody involved to kind of highlight those. Yeah. Mariam, do you have anything to add, or should we? Okay.
I think that was very good.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Okay, so Leah asked, well, first of all, she said, thank you. This was very interesting. Sometimes conversations about AI feel overwhelming with too many productivity tools to keep up with. It seems that ethics is often treated as a lower priority by many teams. So how can non-specialist users who work with AI rather than governance or ethics professionals take a more active role in this area? So everyday people.
Wow. Can I jump in, Ashley, or do you want to?
You go ahead, Mariam.
Well, that's a challenge in general. I think, as Ashley mentioned before, and I truly believe this, like, innovations happen before OpenAI, like in early adopters. So they were early adopters testing things, and then the company improve the situation. Right now, the early adopters is the entire society. We are like in the middle of a chaotic kind of situation. So I think what I have observed is people that are avoiding using AI, people that are using AI even as a psychologist, and I'm very scared about that when people tells me that, okay? And there is people that are identifying some hallucinations or something, but right now we are in a sort of context where it's very messy and complex, and if only you one has a purpose kind of situation, go after and discover, you have to do it. And maybe you might have the tools and the informations to do it, but it needs to come from you. It needs to come from your own curiosity, because for me it was a little bit like that. For example, I started studying AI like 5 years ago, and then I started studying ethics when, and as a designer point of view, when I started studying ethics, I got lost and I got scared and I went off and I said, I don't understand this. I don't understand the moral principles, and how can I translate this into a practical approach, design approach. So I stopped for a moment, and then I started reading the book of Sasha Costanza, Design Justin, that spoke my own language. Okay, and this helped a lot and gave me a general overview of many things. And then I started integrating other authors like Kate Crawford. So I started enlarging this kind of situation, but it came from my own curiosity. And what I invite users is, if you have your own curiosity, you might have the resources, but it could be overwhelming to enter into this world, but you need to be vigilant. So what I invite them is, be objective, don't marry the first answer, ask yourself why that answer is made in that way before marrying to that output. So what I do tell normal people like us without knowing AI, I say that, but it has to come from the purpose of the person itself, I think. Ashley, I don't know if you want to complement something.
Yeah, it's Mary, you said it so well, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing that women have lower adoption rates of AI than men, because men sometimes are like, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm happy to try, whereas women are a little bit more cautious. I think one good starting point is, as much as sometimes I'm a little critical about clickbait titles, there are a lot of posts out there who recommend prompts. And I've heard stories about people, for example, I met someone who was a real estate agent and they follow certain productivity prompts and they started to try them out in the business. Maybe start off by trying one prompt a week, just to see what it can do, because where we are with AI today is it's both capable of quite powerful things, but also being very flawed. And all the points that Miriam has very well covered about how to assess the risk will need to be there. And you can treat it more like a brainstorming partner than as a Q&A bot would be how I would think about it. So one of the things that I do myself as well that I found to be quite powerful in helping shape it go where I want it to go is, sometimes AI will give you a good response and sometimes it's bad. And many people will just be like, oh, I'm just going to take what I need and edit it on my own. I will actually argue and reason with my AI, because when you provide it with explanations, be like, oh, this part was correct, but I don't think this was correct because of ABC. Over time, because it's being able to have AI has more memory now, ChatGPT can remember past conversation. It takes this reasoning and gives you better responses going forward. I think one of the other points that you raised is it's often of a lower priority. And this is one of the unfortunate situations that we have, is ethical product design is costly. It takes resources. You have a lot more additional steps. It takes a lot more thinking and people. And what we will tend to see is that's why we see so many harms in the news, because for-profit industries go for profit, and they fix the harms later. But I think this is why I'm so thrilled to work with the nonprofit sector, because they may be lean and scrappy and under-resourced, but they bring so much care. And I'm really believing that we'll see some of the early innovations in ethical product design come out of nonprofit and social impact spaces.
If there is time, I would like to add something. There is a very interesting case. I don't know if you have heard about this case in China, that DeepSeek became a fortune teller. Okay. And it was, when I read this case, I was very curious about it, because basically it was a person like me that wanted to ask DeepSeek about the future and so on, blah, 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 and it gave that person so very truly interesting answers that she changed her life. Like, she make strong decisions. Okay, like, okay, I'm going to change, I'm going to leave my work, I'm going to do this, like what you do in a fortune teller usually. But she really did it. Afterwards, you understand reading more the case that in the, I don't remember the name of the in China about the fortune teller approach. I don't remember, unfortunately, the name. But she, at that time, changed her life and started studying actually the approach of the fortune teller of China before DeepSeek. After she changed her life, she started studying that theoric situation of China. And then she understood the patterns, okay? And then she started implying the patterns in a more instructional kind of way. And the results were even more important and decisive than the beginning. And she had to understood, and this is why I invite designers to understand the mechanism, but understand the knowledge. She understood both, and she is starting up a company, fortune teller kind of situation, that is based on DeepSeek. But knowledge here, the conclusion of this is knowledge is important. And this curiosity from a, how to say, banal kind of situations that we can do every day or not, she took her into a sort of obsession of deep diving even more and creating afterwards a company that regards and that uses LLM to give people answers, because the information is there. And the LLMs can do the matches of the information in a good, effective way. So this is a very curious kind of situation, but for me, the takeaway is study, acknowledge the situation that you're doing.
That's such a funny use case.
Yeah.
I guess she was happy with the answers. She turned her life around.
The person, she was very happy with the answer. She was in the moment probably of chaos. The answers of DeepSeek influenced that situation. She changed, but then she wanted to understand how the mechanism work offline and online, of course. And then she did the match, and she's now creating a company about it.
I love that. Yeah, so good. So yeah, I think the main takeaway is stay curious. Don't just take everything at a face value. Research, read the books that you like from the creators that you like, and yeah, just try to educate yourself as much as possible, because the AI is here to stay. So we might as well stay informed. So yeah, with that, I want to sincerely thank Mario and Ashley for joining us. I wanted to mention that, as the women mentioned today, women still use AI 25% less than men, and actually only occupy 22% of AI roles. And that goes down to 15% when it comes to executive roles. So it's really important for us to be behind the decision-making table. And that's what we are fighting for at SheAI. So we're on a mission to bridge the gender gap by providing accessible AI education. We just released 10 new courses this past Monday, and you can still get 30% off with the code Launch Party. So that's available by the end of the month. And we have 2 courses that involve AI ethics and governance, as that is really crucial to what we teach as well. And then lastly, I also wanted to thank The Bloom for co-organizing this with us. So I'll share their link as well. They have a link for 10% off to join their community. If you're a change maker and you want to connect with other people who work in roles in social impact, that's definitely the right community to join. So thank you again, ladies. This was lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope we can do an episode part 3 soon. Thank you.